Going to the gym can be discouraging, especially if you're putting in the work but barely seeing changes. But with Tonal, you can actually see your progress with every workout. Tonal provides the convenience of a full gym and the expertise of a personal trainer anytime at home with one sleek system. Designed to reduce your mental load, Tonal is the ultimate strength training system, helping you focus less on workout planning and more on getting results. No more second-guessing your technique. Tonal gives you real-time coaching cues to dial in your form and help you lift safely and effectively. After a quick assessment, Tonal sets the optimal weight for every move and adjusts in 1-pound increments as you get stronger, so you're always challenged. Tonal lets you choose from a variety of expert-led workouts, from strength to arrow hit to yoga and mobility, to keep you coming back for more. For a limited time, go to Tonal.com to get $500 off your Tonal purchase, plus a free 4-year warranty. That's Tonal.com for $500 off, plus a free 4-year warranty. Tonal.com.
The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Hey, Dick Morris, how you doing?
Doing good.
I like when they say, it's Sunday, you know what that means.
Yeah,
I got to wake Dick up. Get up! You got a show to do.
No tax on tips or on overtime or on Social Security benefits. Tax deductions for auto loans, interest if the car is made in America. Where is the money coming from for these Trump tax cuts? Answer, China. Trump's trade deal with China provides for 30% tariffs on Chinese imports to the U.S. Now do the math. They sell us $500 billion per year. So 30% is $150 billion of revenue. That's more than enough to fund the tax cut and a great deal more besides. And China's revenues won't cover it. Trump is imposing a blanket 10% tariff on everybody. With the U.S. importing $4 trillion annually, that's $400 billion more of revenue. Donald Trump is becoming a sort of international Robin Hood, robbing China to pay the American people. But the congressional Republicans haven't factored these revenues into their calculations. They're bleeding themselves white battling over cuts to Medicaid when there's all this new revenue staring them in the face. No cuts needed to fund the tax cuts. Trump negotiated his trade deal with China over the weekend of May 9th to 11th, and the following week, Speaker Johnson unveiled the tax cut program. Why has no media or no congressman thought to correlate the two? After decades of ripping off America with unfair and illegal trade practices, that China is being made to pay us back, and the money's going to waitresses who are hustling for tips, workers stuck at their desk doing overtime, Social Security beneficiaries, and those who buy American-made cars. The genius of Donald Trump.
Really?
And we have to be sure we do not let these 4 Republicans sabotage Trump's big, beautiful bill. They voted against it in the Budget Committee, and we have to bring pressure on them to support it on the hit when it comes up for a vote. The leader of this gang of 4 is Chip Roy, R-O-Y, a congressman from Texas, who's normally a reliable conservative. But here he's leading this charge, being totally phony, saying that this is his effort to balance the budget and cut the deficit and stop out-of-control spending. Absolute garbage. The others are Ralph Norman from South Carolina, Josh Beacom from Oklahoma, and Andrew Clyde from Georgia.
Go over this, Dick. Explain why these guys want to do this.
Well, right now it's publicity. They want us to get up there and pose as fiscal deficit hawks and say that Trump isn't running their lives, but while they run their mouths. It's Chip Roy of Texas, Ralph Norman of South Carolina, Josh Beacom of Oklahoma, and Andrew Clyde of Georgia. Those folks need to hear from you. They need phone calls. They need letters. Chip Roy of Texas, R-O-Y. Ralph Norman of South Carolina. Josh Beacom, that's B-R-O-C-H-E-E-M of Oklahoma, and Andrew Clyde of Georgia. Russ Voigt, who's the former director of the Office of Management and Budget, said that that these four are profoundly wrong. They said, as a nation, we have had no spending cut victories of any consequence in nearly 30 years. In 1997, the balanced budget agreement included roughly $800 billion in mandatory savings adjusted for inflation. But the current House bill dwarfs that. It includes $1.6 trillion in savings.
Wow.
Not gimmicks, but real reforms that lower spending and improve the programs. You've been hearing about the DOJ reforms piecemeal now. And these are those reforms put together and put into the bill. So the bill satisfies the very red line test that House fiscal hawks laid out a few weeks ago. They said then that the cost of any tax cut had to be paid for with $2.5 trillion in assumed economic growth, but the rest had to be covered with savings from reform. This bill exceeds that test by nearly $100 billion.
Wow. The reform being DOJ.
So after decades of nothing happening, the House bill provides an historic $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings, and it does it with guts and a 3-seat majority. This is Russ Voigt speaking, the former budget director. $36 trillion in debt is not solved overnight. It's solved by advancing and securing victories at a scale that over time gives a fighting shot to address the problem. The House's one beautiful big bill, that's Trump's quote, deserves passage for many reasons. Tax cuts, border security funding, eliminating the Green New Deal, work requirements, win-win despondency. But should not be lost on anyone the degree to which it ends decades of fiscal futility and gets us winning again. It deserves the vote of every member of Congress, including the gang of four that is opposed it right now, killing it.
Which is Chip Roy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chip Roy, Texas, Ralph Norman, South Carolina, Josh Broheem, Brocheem in Oklahoma, and Andrew Clyde, Georgia. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's cool. Repeat the names so that people can know to write them and to call them.
Right.
Trump's momentum is at stake here. He came off a very, very successful trip to the Middle East, and now if he can't get this bill passed, he will be in serious trouble. He took all of his reforms, all of his changes, and put them in what he called one big, beautiful bill. And if you're a Republican, you have to support this bill. And these four renegades are not doing it, largely for personal publicity. They just need to be brought up short.
And we're only up 3 in Congress, right? So these 4 guys, so that's right. That's one down.
I think we can afford to lose 2 votes. One vote we can lose is a guy named Brandon Gill, who
he's the best.
Whose wife is giving birth.
Oh, Danielle.
Danielle Gill is the daughter of Dinesh D'Souza.
And Winston is the baby's name. I called her yesterday.
Yeah.
I talked to her. Well, I texted her.
That is so cool.
And they have Marigold.
That is so cool. But it is so important that this big, beautiful bill pass. Without it, taxes go back to what they were in 2016, before Trump came in office. Before the Trump tax cuts of 2017, and certainly before the proposals he's made for 2024. And it'll screw up the economy. It'll sap Trump of his momentum. Basically, these 4 congressmen, in effect, voted to impeach Trump. And they didn't really, but that's the effect of what they're doing.
They want to do it now.
And it's very, very important that they switch and that they vote for this bill.
Yes.
And the opposition is totally phony. It says that this bill increases spending and doesn't cut enough. Well, hell, it cuts $1.6 trillion, more than has ever been cut, more than all the other cuts put together. They said that it will increase the deficit, but with these extra revenues, it won't. And what they're not counting, even in those estimates, is the money Trump is bringing in from tariffs. He's raised tariffs by $600 billion in the rest of the world plus China, and he's got another $700 billion coming. And we get 10% of that as a budget revenue, and that revenue completely puts this package on blue and positive ground.
And then you have businesses coming to us, opening up industry and
huge amounts.
That alone.
The jobs growth that's going on now is absolutely shocking the elites. Get a job.
The silhouettes.
Democrats will all be bald soon. Every time one of President Trump's policies improves life for Americans, Democratic politicians, pundits, fake media, and all the other haters pull their hair out in agony.
It's so ridiculous.
April employment rose by 177,000 jobs, despite the fact that federal employment is down. Fewer people in government jobs, more people in private jobs. To the surprise of nobody with even a rudimentary grasp of economics, April's employment figures are robust, despite the usual blare of alarms about a tariff shock and a looming recession from the usual mouthpieces of the clueless establishment. It turns out that when you get rid of 26,000 unproductive federal government jobs, slash federal spending to the tune of billions of dollars, loudly proclaim your intention to cut taxes, deregulate the economy, re-embark on the development of neglected natural resources, including energy and rare earths, and even signal a desire to phase out income taxes, the markets will react positively. 170,000 new jobs were added to the 228,000 new jobs last month. Not only has the tariff stock market apocalypse failed to materialize, it now turns out that April employment rose by more than almost any estimate by tens of thousands of jobs. The sentiments of a baffled political and business establishment was summed up by Seema Shah, the principal asset manager, who commented on Friday, "We can push recession concerns to another month. Job numbers remain very strong, suggesting there was an impressive degree of resilience in the economy in play before this tariff shock." Healthcare accounted for some of the largest job gains, 51,000. Leisure and hospitality added 24,000. Professional business sector added 17,000. The economy under Trump-friendly leadership appears headed in the absolute right direction.
Up and away.
Up and away. Now, we have very good news locally. New Jersey is one of the only states that elect its governor next year.
Sandra, are you listening, Sandra?
There are only 3 states that do it, Louisiana, Mississippi, and New Jersey. And Trump has now backed John Citarelli for governor.
It could be Chitter, depends on how he wants to say it. But
he's a Republican running for governor in New Jersey. And Trump's endorsement of Citarelli basically assures that there will not be a primary. If there will be, it'll be a minor one. And we can concentrate our resources on electing Citarelli governor. New Jersey almost flipped in the last election. And Citarelli has a very good chance of winning and flipping the state.
What do we know about him? Do we know much about him right now?
Well, we know that he ran 4 years ago, and had his policies been followed, Jersey's taxes would be a lot lower today. And I think that he really has been a great candidate.
We don't have time for Sandra, but when we come back, why don't we put her on?
Yeah, we'll ask Sandra about him.
All right.
I've
spoken
to him, and I think he's really good.
When did you speak to him?
By phone about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
Where was my briefing?
Okay. All right. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Citarelli, but we're also going to talk about how inflation has slowed. With all of this positive economic numbers, inflation is down.
Amazing.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So this is Dick Morris with the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. So let's go to Sandra in New Jersey.
Hi, Sandra.
Sandra first turned me on to Jack Citarelli. And,
well, let me say, when Donald Trump was running for president, that was the most important man to win. Now, this is the second important man in my life that I want to see become governor. Jack Citarelli is very classy. He's very honest. He's very driven. He's devoted to the state. And I did a beautiful meet and greet for him last year at the Women's National Republican Club. And I want you all to know that he refused to take any money from any person that would come to listen to him speak. He said, whoever comes, I'm paying for it. So it just shows you how he feels about the people that come to listen to him talk. But I want to say something very interesting. He told me once that when he was class president, 3 times in high school, he received the Outstanding Achievement Award in American history, and he also earned the Model Citizenship Award as well. So this is when he was really young. So it's in his blood. He's a winner. He's an achiever. He cares. And he also ran a very, very successful business, a publishing company. He worked with doctors, and he had journals published for doctors. He's very smart. He's a CPA, MBA. He's classy. He's articulate. He cares.
And really, New Jersey is the next state about to flip. The Republican vote share has been gaining. It gained significantly last time, and we have a very good shot of winning in New Jersey. While that is going on, inflation.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Sandra.
Inflation has been under control despite all this good economic news.
The annual consumer inflation rate for April slowed down to 2.3%, the lowest since February 2021, according to the latest data compiled by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Despite the imposition of reciprocal tariffs by President Donald Trump on April 2nd, that all of Washington, D.C.'s experts arrogantly projected would increase prices. Food at home down 0.1%, food away from home down 0.4%, gasoline down 0.1%, fuel oil down 1.3%, apparel down 0.2%, new vehicles unchanged, excuse me, used cars and trucks down 0.5%. So much for that. In the meantime, the tariffs were successfully utilized by the president to spearhead trade negotiations with countries all over the world, already resulting in reciprocal trade agreements with the United Kingdom and China. In the latter case, lowering reciprocal tariffs, which again, all of the experts state was impossible. Democrats who foolishly hitched themselves to the wagon that inflation would go accelerate from tariffs are now careening down the mountainside of false predictions along with prices. Now the tariffs are reciprocally been lowered. What will their next prediction be? Who cares, first of all, right, Dick? The Chicken Little doomsaying by the president's tariff opponents have at least created one bit of certainty for the markets that those opponents are likely to be wrong. They're always wrong. And what are they going to... They hate that we're going to do well. Yeah, they just can't stand it.
They do. And to pull off the kind of economic growth that Trump has gotten, to pull off the new jobs he's created and the new business deals he's done, and to do that and keep inflation down and actually have prices drop while he's imposing tariffs is unbelievable. And the way he's doing it is that when the tariffs go up, businesses scamper and find ways to hold their costs down. They rejigger their supply chains and get their supplies from countries that are not subject to the tariff. And that's the whole point of the tariff. And it's working incredibly well.
And us consumers, the U.S. consumers, are just readjusting.
Yeah.
We're buying stuff that's made here or not.
Tell them your story about the caribou.
Wait, with the oil?
Yeah.
How they readjust?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a good segue, but, when they didn't want to drill for oil, this is back in George Bush?
In Alaska.
In Alaska. They wanted to go to Anwar, correct? Yeah, Anwar. And all the liberals were saying, you can't do that. You're going to kill the caribou. You're going to do this. You can't do it. Here's what I say. The guys are going to come in with the big trucks and the cranes and the drills, and the caribou are going to be eating the grass. They're going to go, oh, look at that. Some guys are coming in with big trucks and cranes. Let's go over there and eat. And that's what they're going to do. They're not going to mow them down. I don't know where that comes from, how you put that together.
No, but that's what's happening.
It's so true.
The tariffs come in, the caribou find somewhere
right.
else to eat.
Oh, yeah, I got it. I was trying to find that. So anyway, listen to this. Trump gets $1.2 trillion in Qatar deals. Check it out. Oh, there's a good song right here, I think, right? Trump put you on easy street. President Trump has secured nearly $2 trillion in deals for the U.S. companies, including more than $1.2 trillion in economic investment by Qatar. Wait, $2 trillion plus the $1.2 trillion? Is that what you just said there?
No.
That's
included.
Included, right. Got it. But in Qatar, by the time his Middle East trip began in the second leg Wednesday, reaching the halfway point of his tour, Trump advanced his approach to bolstering U.S. interest in the region through transactional business deals, eschewing his predecessor's strategy of securing peace through diplomacy.
Yeah, that's important. The Biden administration and the Obama administration said the way to get peace in the Middle East and the way to increase our control there is through diplomacy. Send the Secretary of State to meet with them and negotiate diplomatic accords. Trump says no. Bring 30 CEOs of major companies and sit down with the capitalists in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and cut economic deals.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, he says, everyone wants to come and witness what's happening right here. As president, I'm proud that our growing friendship has brought us into a full-fledged economic and security partnership, as we've seen clearly on this trip. Mr. Trump said in Qatar, we're setting records on this trip. We're bringing a lot of investment back to the U.S., and, with that, right, I want to see what The View has to say about this. Oh, this is horrible. What's he doing? We should have a contest on what they're going to say each time.
Well, we're talking about
great
the airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I want to impeach him because he got an airplane.
Yeah. Forget about the $2 trillion of investment in the United States. Qatar
gave him kickback.
Is giving him an airplane that they've stopped using, and they're giving it to us for free. And after Trump's presidency, it's going to go to the taxpayer and be there for the next president.
Unbelievable.
Hopefully, will be a Republican.
Yeah,
in fact, I'll bet that Vance has his bags on the plane already.
And I want to know where that, he has to be using that magic wand. Remember Obama said, what do you have, a magic wand?
Yeah, right.
I want to see where this magic wand is. Anyway, much like the $600 billion in deals Trump secured from Saudi Arabia on Tuesday, it's unclear how much of the funding was committed before the trip, and who cares anyway, right? Time frames for the deals were not explained. The centerpiece of Wednesday's deal agreement to pay $96 billion for a 210 American-made Boeing 787 and a 777 X-Jets. The deal is Boeing's largest order for both airplane models. The White House said the agreement would support 154,000 jobs, wow, it's unbelievable, annually, and could total more than 1 million jobs in the U.S., including production and delivery. It's the largest order of jets in history of Boeing. That's pretty good, Mr. Trump said. He's funny. Said after signing the deal. A White House fact sheet said that trillion-dollar fatigue also includes economic deals totaling more than $243 billion signed between the two nations. No impeachment yet?
And that's in addition to what he got from Saudi Arabia.
Unbelievable. He got $650 billion in investment. Trump kicked off his Middle East tour in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia the other day, with one big goal for his trip. He returned with $1 trillion in business deals and investment pledges. He just secured $600 billion commitment from Saudi Arabia. Diplomacy and geopolitics come second as a priority. More about that $600 billion deal. The $600 billion the commitment from the Saudis will be to invest in the United States. It will also include a multi-billion-dollar defense partnership. It includes a $142 billion defense and security deal that equips Saudi Arabia with the state-of-the-art state-of-the-art war equipment provided by dozens of U.S. firms. The equipment includes air and missile defense and Air Force and space advancements. Remember, Saudi Arabia's crown prince pledged shortly after Trump's re-entering office in January that the kingdom will invest $600 billion in the U.S. during his presidency.
So this is just incredible. It really is an economic partnership with the rich countries of the Middle East.
Well, money
neglecting diplomacy and instead working on economics, generating money and generating jobs is the basis of what Trump is doing, and it's very successful.
Money is strength and power. Strength is to exert force. Money and power is to exert force quickly. So strength and power, that's what this is all about.
Yep.
From the money that these guys have.
Yep.
Strength, power, and
while this is going on, the new studies by the government, by the Labor Department, show that 31% of men in the U.S. aged between 25 and 40 are who are not working full time.
Wait, hold it. I think you read that wrong. The current population survey indicates that 31% of men ages 25 to 40 who are not really men. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that?
Who are not working full time are collecting some form of cash or benefit. In other words, there's this incredible economic growth going on.
There's no real men anymore.
And these great opportunities for jobs. Millennial men are sitting on their butts and not working. They're staying home. And it turns out that a third of them are collecting some form of cash benefit, like food stamps, Social Security for disability, supplemental security income, or unemployment insurance in the previous year. Such benefits are particularly common among the nearly 4 million men in this age group.
Wow.
Who are not in the labor force.
How do they get a date? What woman is going to ever want to go out with them?
Of whom 40% had received some cash payments or cash government benefit. This does not include other non-cash government supports like health insurance or reduced rent. So Biden basically printed a lot of money and gave it to a lot of people who decided that they didn't have to work. So they dropped out the labor force and they said, we're not looking for jobs. The last thing in the world we want is a job. And what they're doing instead is relying on government benefits. And the government benefits are eating into our ability to provide economic growth for everybody because they're encouraging people to stay home. And it turns out that the U.S. is not losing manufacturing jobs and has not been losing them. It's blue states that are losing manufacturing jobs. The red states and the country as a whole is doing fine. Here's why. Right-to-work laws, cheap energy, affordable housing, low-cost land, fast permitting, low taxes, and immigration reform.
This is in the red states. This is what you're
the
saying.
red states.
All right.
A powerful combination has big effects. For example, in 1992, there was not a single auto plant in Alabama. Today, it's the number one auto exporting state, producing more than 1 million cars a year.
Oh, beautiful.
Bringing in 50,000 jobs.
50,000 jobs and billions of dollars in investment. Instead of big three, this is good. Instead of the big three, it's the big five: Honda, Toyota, Hyundai, Mercedes-Benz, and Mazda, along with the ever-expanding web of suppliers. This is just one example of South economic prowess. Now, let me say this: I'm a Chevy guy and American car guy. In the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, the best cars built. I would never buy a foreign car. Well, I would buy some, but never. Now these cars are made here, so they really are American. You know, just because it's Honda, Toyota, and Hyundai,
right.
You know,
that's right.
They're okay, made here,
and that's the key. They're made here. The labor is here. The owners are here, everything except the name.
And even, I got to tell you the other thing, I'm as I said, a jam guy. The Kia is a cool looking car. And first, it's got to look cool for me. I don't just get into some Porsche or Mercedes if it doesn't look cool. You know what I mean? It's got to look good. Then it's got to be a great car, right? And that Kia is, I think that's Korean, I think. The Kia? I'm not sure. I think so, right? It's a good looking car. In other words, they got the right guys to design it, They're looking at GM and they're looking at the cool cars.
And now under Trump, if you buy such a car and you borrow money for it, the interest, if it's American, is tax deductible.
That's great. That's
which
so
is
great.
Just terrific.
That's so great.
So when we come back, we'll talk about a question that has bothered me ever since the election of 24.
What's the weather going to be like tomorrow?
What?
What's the weather going to be like tomorrow?
No.
Oh, that bothers me.
Did Pfizer delay the announcement of a COVID vaccine until after Election Day?
Oh, my God.
We'll talk about that when we come back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, Dick Morris.
In 2000.
Wait, what show is this? What is it?
This is the Dick Morris Show with Doug Depierro, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
There you go.
In 2000, I believe the most important thing that the Democrats did to rig the election and to prevent Trump from winning was when Pfizer held up in the announcement of a vaccine for COVID until the week after Election Day. They obviously knew about it because they had spent the money on research on it. And when they developed the vaccine to deal with COVID, which ultimately led to its, not extinction, but it's becoming well under control, they did not announce it until the week after Election Day. So 7 days after Election Day, they announced that they had the vaccine. Now, lawmakers are investigating whether Pfizer waited to share the results of the COVID vaccine until after the presidential election, based on allegations by a former Pfizer scientist that it was part of an effort to deliberately slow down the testing, according to a new letter from the House Judiciary Committee.
That'll help them slow it down.
The House panel is seeking information from Pfizer and from the scientist whistleblower, Philip Dormitzer, after learning that he allegedly told colleagues in 24 that he was worried he would face an investigation of his own role in the vaccine's release and asked to be relocated to Canada. There are two big things that fixed the 2000 election. One is the delay of the announcement of the vaccine until after the election. And the second is the cover-up of Hunter Biden's laptop, claiming that it was not real, that it was Russian disinformation. And you don't have to go through the election returns of Pennsylvania or Michigan or Georgia or Arizona and talk about, who did what and who covered up what. Those two factors, both of which should be illegal are illegal, were key in Trump losing the election. The delay in the announcement of the vaccine was unconscionable. Pfizer contributed huge amounts to the Biden campaign and nothing to Trump. And they received huge amounts of federal subsidy to develop this vaccine. And for them to develop it and keep it secret simply so that they hid it until after the election is the worst form of election interference.
Absolutely. So where's the accountability at this point?
There may be some now because the Congressional Committee is investigating it.
Good.
And the other thing, of course, is that we were told over and over again, don't pay any attention to the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah.
In fact, Trump brought it to a debate, the debate they had.
And Chris Wallace,
and was about to talk about it, and Chris Wallace shut him down and said this has been found to be Russian disinformation. Wallace was the moderator in the debate, and the debate served, rather than to expose what Hunter Biden's laptop exposed, it served to tell people that the Trump administration was manipulating this, and this was Russian disinformation.
But they didn't do that with Hillary when she was doing what she was doing.
No, those two things,
right.
The Pfizer covering up the vaccine and Wallace at the debate covering up the Hunter Biden laptop, I think were absolutely essential in the election being rigged. In fact, you remember, Doug, the meeting that we had with Trump right after the election. I think it was in it was before this election. It was in 19 or 20.
At Mar-a-Lago in his office upstairs,
That's
that looked
right.
like the Oval Office. That was unbelievable.
And Trump had been going around and still is saying the election was rigged, it was fixed, and citing inspectors and everybody in the different states. And he was getting a reputation for being what they called an election denier.
Right.
And the Democrats were peddling the phony line that Trump was essentially endangering democracy by calling into question the election and saying it was rigged. And the problem was, how do you tell Trump not to talk about that?
And you knew exactly what to tell him.
But yet to still harp on the fact that the election was rigged. So tell him about that.
And Dick said, don't talk about, counting the votes and the machines. Talk about that laptop and talk about that. That's the thing that got you. And Trump just kind of looked at it. Wait, I got to tell another story about the same meeting. Dick, he's amazing. We had talking points for Trump. As a matter of fact, he used quite a few of them in his speech, and I got into a couple of those. I was very proud of that. But anyway, Dick says to Trump, and we were talking about Madison and Jefferson, and he had a whole idea, history, and Trump, at one point, President Trump said, wait a minute, Dick, stop.
I said to Trump, this is not about miscounts in Michigan or in Pennsylvania or phony ballots. This is about the heritage of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and Abraham Lincoln in telling the truth to the American people.
And Trump says, stop, Dick, and I'm going to let you continue. He goes, stop, Dick, wait. Joanne, come in with your laptop, and Susie Wiles. Susie, come in here. I want you to hear this, right? So we all sit down, and Trump, President Trump, I got to keep saying it, President Trump turns to Dick and says, tell our women here what you were just saying. Dick turns around and does almost a 10-minute, about a 7 to 10 minute speech. And he wasn't ready for it. He just had it in his head. And he went, well, this, and say a couple of things you did, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, and I can't really say it, you don't have the beep button ready, do you? At the end of I'm not gonna curse. I'm gonna let them know how Trump, me, Susie, we all had holy SH, because he turned around. Dick did a speech that was amazing, and the next day he did a video, Trump did, and it was pretty close. It was pretty verbatim for everything. That was an amazing Dick Morris feat. I got it.
It was a key moment in the campaign because Trump faced the choice of, do I keep talking about 2020 and claiming that the election was rigged, feeding their propaganda that I'm destabilizing democracy,
right,
and that I'm dumping on elections.
And you flipped it.
Or do I absolutely abandon the issue and let them get away with it? And I said, no, there's another alternative.
Amazing.
Say you're not dealing with the issue of inspectors or recounts or any of that. You're dealing with the fundamental issue of free speech as conceived by Madison and Jefferson and our founding fathers. And under free speech, if a laptop like this surfaced 2 weeks before the election, you have the right to talk about it, you have the right to expose what's in it, and you have the right to hold the president accountable for it. And then now I would also add that when you have evidence that Pfizer withheld the announcement of the COVID vaccine, the most coveted and important announcement by a medical company in
history.
In history, really.
Pretty much. People dying.
Saved over 1 million lives. And they suppressed it until after the election. With federally funded research, that's the other thing to do.
Right.
And by stressing that stuff, Trump was able to continue to talk about the election being rigged, but do it in terms that were politically acceptable and actionable.
And it worked.
Rather than saying you need to go into the vote counting in these specific states.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to kiss your butt or anything, but that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was.
I have to tell you.
It was amazing.
Later on, I'll yell at him about something else. Doesn't matter. When we get back.
Yeah, break? Okay. Welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Lux, repeat your question on the air, okay?
It was about
Operation Warp Speed.
Yes, that had a lot to do with it.
How did
yes.
that have to do with the cover-up with the release of the vaccine?
Right.
This is one of the most incredible stories of American history. When the COVID epidemic broke out, President Trump said, we are going to produce a vaccine to immunize people to this before hundreds of millions of Americans are killed. And he went to the drug companies and he said, guys, what you need to do is to put all your resources into developing a vaccine against this. And to incentivize this, I'm going to let you make any amount of money you want from this. I won't be subjecting you to any price controls. And more than that, I will promise $100 million to each of you companies, prepaying for a vaccine that you haven't even developed, and haven't even said you're able to develop, because I don't want there to be any time delay in coming up with it, because each minute means another dead American. And the companies, and he said to them, I don't care if you can't develop it, if you're wrong scientifically, if it won't work, that's okay. I'll still give you the $100 million. I just want you to know that this money is there, and that as soon as you develop it, we're going to be able to make you billions of dollars of revenue. And the Europeans said, no, that is not the way to do it. We're going to set up a commission of all of the UN, all the NATO members, the Western Alliance, and we're all going to meet and coordinate our research, saying you do this, you do this, you do this. And Trump said that is not the way to do it. The way is to have a rush, a competition, a cutthroat competition for who can develop this thing first. And Trump's approach was right, and the Europeans still have not developed a vaccine against COVID. The shots we're all getting are from Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson. They were all made by American companies because of what Trump did. Then then Trump did something else. He said, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take entire factories, entire plants, and move them en masse from Europe and other countries to the U.S. so that they can make this vaccine.
And ready them.
And it was an unbelievable thing to do that.
Well, you know, a moose is a horse designed by a committee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Guy's got a great design of a stallion. Oh, a great artist design. Now, here's a horse. I'm going to make this horse. We got to do it. Oh, let's get a committee. And before you know it, make big feet and then the things on its head. A moose is a horse designed by a committee.
After Trump did this, and nobody but Trump would do this, Pfizer turns around and donates millions to the Biden campaign, and then sits on the fact that the vaccine has been developed until after the election.
For a month, right? It's like 3 weeks or a month.
1 week. 1 week after the
They
election.
sit. No, I'm saying beforehand they knew about it.
They knew about it for months.
Could have
before
saved
that.
months. Oh,
They
wait.
could have saved hundreds and thousands
Right
of lives,
there,
and
I
they
want
chose not to
accountability.
because of politics.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
Trump and Kennedy are sticking it to Big Pharma.
yeah, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. said on Monday that the impetus behind President Donald Trump's executive order to reduce prescription drug costs for Americans was price fixing by European nations. Kennedy said Americans account for 75% of pharmaceutical companies' revenue, but are just about 4.2% of the world's population. The result, Americans are paying more for prescription drugs than the rest of the world. It's not really the pharmaceutical industry's fault, Kennedy told. He said, it's the European nations who are price fixing and taking advantage of us, and so we are now going to fix that. Trump's executive order calls for the U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer and the Commerce Department to ensure that foreign countries pay their fair share in pharmaceutical research and development. Kennedy said that the U.S. would fund Big Pharma's research and development while other countries would benefit from lower prices. Sure, we do all the research and then the other countries get it, right? The executive order calls for lowering prescription drug prices through a most favored nation policy, which sets drug prices based on their prices in foreign nations. A federal judge blocked its implementation, wow, I am losing it, in 2020 before the Biden administration abandoned the program. The order also calls for Kennedy to establish a mechanism through which American patients can buy their drugs directly from manufacturers who sell to Americans at a most favored nation price by bypassing the middleman. He said by eliminating the middlemen, which is what he called pharmaceutical benefit managers, is a carrot to the pharmaceutical industry. Kennedy, who talked to many pharmaceutical companies' CEOs last week to alert them of what might be on the horizon, said he believes the executive order will stick. The pharmaceutical companies know that it's time, and we've been meeting with them, and you know this was not a surprise to them, he said. I had meetings with most of the CEOs last week, and I gave them at least a veiled warning that this was coming, but they knew it was coming. We have ways of enforcing this, and if we can't come to an agreement, if we can't come to an agreement, they have ways of dealing with this.
As Doug said, we do all the research, we do all the development, and then they make their money from these products.
Yeah.
They don't pay us back for the research.
I'm sorry.
And what Trump is doing now is he's saying, if you sell this medicine, this insulin, for example, to anywhere in the world for $20, you got to charge Americans $20 too. You can't charge them $50. You have to not charge them more than you charge anybody else for the lowest price for this drug.
The manufacturer's price, basically.
Manufacturer's price,
right.
Yeah.
Well, this happened with the auto industry. Japan, we developed the most beautiful cars in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, early 70s. And Japan was making junk back then, and they started taking our ideas and our designs, and we put all the money into our research and development of cars, and Japan didn't have to put that money in. So they were selling the cars for, I don't know, half the price, but a lot less. Same thing.
So, well, the Democrats are coming up with new schemes to subsidize drug costs and saying, aren't we going to lower your drug costs? We'll pay for your drugs. Trump is lowering the cost by demanding that the drug companies not profiteer and provide us with the lowest cost drugs possible.
Okay, when we get back, we're going to talk about children in schools.
Yeah.
The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show. During the election campaign of 2024, I told Trump, it's not enough just to be pro-life. You have to do something to help mothers once they do give birth. Incentivize the birth. And don't just say, rot's a ruck, you're on your own. Just don't abort the baby and carry it, but then no help. And instead I called for a motherhood agenda of a series of things that would really help mothers with children.
This is great.
And Trump did something last week, which was incredible.
He has a draft a draft.
Before we do that,
go
he
on.
said that every mother of every live birth, if they're married, will get $1,000 to help raise their child, a grant of $1,000. So if you want to have children and not kill them in abortion, but have a live baby and you're married, we'll give you $1,000 to get you started. And it turns out that he has included in the reconciliation bill a proposed retirement fund for kids.
Like an IRA. The money account for growth and advancement, or a MAGA account, is the brainchild of Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz. Initially called Invest America, the initiative was branded on its way to the House Ways and Means Committee. Cruz spent months in discussion with House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican, obviously, Louisiana, Committee Chair Jason Smith of Missouri, and the White House. The proposal will create tax advantage investment accounts with $1,000 for every newborn baby with a Social Security number. That money would accumulate interest and value through investments over time. You can call it anything you like. What is powerful in enabling every child in America to have an investment account and a stake in the American free enterprise system, Cruz said. Cruz said President Donald Trump weighed in directly to include this provision in the reconciliation bill and added the proposal's legacy provisions will please voters over long term. The MAGA account would allow families and employees to contribute up to $5,000 a year in the children's account, with the goal being that would total in tens of thousands of dollars to help pay for education, job training, starting a business, or buying a home. Or if it's me, buying a really cool car or a motorcycle. Either one.
No cars.
No
Just
cars?
homes. Yeah.
Oh, homes. Okay, fine. Distribution from the accounts would be taxed at the capital gains rate. This is essentially a 401k for every newborn in America. And just like with 401ks, employees have seen it's very attractive benefit for the employees to match or help seed those savings accounts, said Cruz, who has suggested the accounts for more than a year. Cruz said that the MAGA accounts will help every child invest in America. This is great.
Yeah, it's incredible. It means that if you take $5,000 a year and you invest it in this program, you will be taxed. You won't pay income tax on the $5,000. You'll just pay the capital gains rate, which is only about a third of what the income tax rate is. And that tax advantage will give you the ability to amass an IRA for your baby or for your child.
That's that's $100,000 in 20 years.
That they can use to pay for college and pay for all of their expenses.
Is there, I don't know if you know this yet, if it's in the bill yet, is there a cap to the age limit of this? So you could just keep putting in it until they're 30, 50 years old?
I do not know.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like 18 years old or...
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Also going to have to look into that.
Well, continuing with the policy of helping people raise healthy children, Trump is pushing a new school choice program nationally.
The
ECCA, the Educational Choice for Children's Act, has been incorporated into the budget reconciliation package. The legislation would triple the number of students who currently benefit from private school choice programs across the country. The law would provide up to $10 billion in tax credits to induce greater charitable donations to nonprofit schools, for nonprofit scholarship granting organizations. These organizations would then use these private donations to award scholarships for tuition and other educational services as parental demand increases. So would the initial allowable tax credits to generate additional contributions. In other words, instead of passing out welfare benefits, what Trump is doing is saying that private charities and private organizations will get tax credits if they set up scholarship programs to help children go to charter schools. And the reason he's doing it that way is that a lot of states prohibit the use of state money for religious schools, the separation of church and state. So what he's saying is, I'm not going to give you state money. What I'll do is make tax incentives for private foundations and private charities to do this. And then as parents want more money to go into these schools, you're going to be able to, the fund with the charitable fund will increase. Close to 40% of America's kids in public schools live in one of 16 states with no access to school choice. Nearly all these states are governed by Democrats who are sadly determined to block every effort to empower families.
Why?
Because they're paid by the teachers' union. Millions more children live in one of the 34 states with school choice, but more than half of them restrict eligibility and funding to levels that exclude most families.
Wow.
So what Trump is doing is not only allowing school choice, he's funding it. And he's doing it in the most creative way possible by giving tax incentives to charities and other nonprofit organizations to offer scholarships for parents who want to send their kids to charter schools.
Good.
And he's doing that to bypass states like New York that prohibit charter schools. Don't prohibit, but they undermine it. They limit it.
Once again, the teachers' union?
Yeah, by the teachers' union. Now, the private sector, the charitable sector, will generate revenues to do this. It's revolutionary.
And now he's going to cut Harvard's money, $450 million. 8 federal agencies are determining roughly $450 million in grants to Harvard, roughly $450 million grants to Harvard University, in addition to the $2.2 billion that was terminated previously. The Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism said in a May 13th statement published by the Department of Education. Harvard University has repeatedly failed to confront the pervasive race discrimination, anti-Semitic harassment plaguing its campuses. Jewish students were subjected to pervasive insults, physical assault, and intimidation with no meaningful response from Harvard's leadership. In one incident, a protester who faced criminal charges for allegedly assaulting a Jewish student on campus was granted, this is unbelievable, granted $65,000 fellowship by the Harvard Law Review, an influential student-run journal, the task force said, adding that the fellowship was meant to serve the public interest. Okay, the decision was reviewed and approved by a faculty committee, demonstrating just how radical Harvard has become. Harvard's campus once was a symbol of academic prestige, has become a breeding ground for virtue signaling and discrimination. So think about that. So take the money away.
So this is all part of what we've talked about, of the long march through America's institutions.
Right.
To undo the Marxism, undo the communism that was planted there when the teachers' unions took over control of the schools and pushed leftist ideology. And by undermining the teachers' unions at the elementary and high school level, by funding charter schools, and undermining the universities that propagate these policies by cutting off their tax abatements and their tax exemptions, Trump is really striking a blow against the counterculture and against the whole idea that the left has been pushing.
You know, the beauty of this is that this long march, as you say and we say now, it was 50 years. We're talking from the late 60s till now. So you're talking 50 or 60 years. Trump's going to do away with this in 5 years. And this is amazing.
In a few months, 5
months. Right, exactly. With that kind of money, he's pulling money out of you. You better stop, or else I'm going to take all your funding away. Wow, that's amazing.
He's victimizing the leading college in America to scare the hell out of the others. And believe me, this is working.
Right. Love this
Meantime,
guy.
the Democrats are not sure what their message should be in 2028. What are they going to do? Talk about the economy? Talk about inflation that doesn't exist? Talk about immigration, illegal immigration that has stopped completely? What are the Democrats going to do?
They're going to talk about how horrible Trump is. What are you talking about? It's a cool groove. That's a cool groove. I'll go with that.
The Democrats don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And there are two examples out there that they could follow. One is Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is a billionaire, who called for mass protests, mobilization, and disruption against the Trump administration, saying last month that Republicans cannot know a moment of peace.
Oh, really?
That's one approach. The other is Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who says that while she's critical of Trump, she worked closely with him and Michigan Republicans to secure funding for the Selfridge Air National Guard base and greeted Trump with a hug on the tarmac when he traveled to the state to announce the funding.
So right there, we got a little opposite of the ends, right?
But that's
dichotomy.
But none of that's going to work. The Democratic candidate in 28 is going to be AOC.
Oh, you mean for president?
For president.
Yeah.
Because she is massing great support in the Democratic Party. And the other people who are trying to get support from voters are not appeasing the hardliners and the crazies. And they're going to take over the Democratic primary.
So like you always say, these crazies will get the nomination, but they'll never get the public vote.
Exactly.
The finish.
The lunatics will take over the asylum, and they'll win the nomination, but then they'll get creamed in the election, just like Humphrey got creamed, and McGovern got creamed, and Mondale got creamed, and Carter got creamed. None of them will be able to actually win the election once they win the primaries with the crazies backing them. Meantime, China is advancing in the Western Hemisphere. China has signed a trade deal with Latin America. Xi, the president of China, is hosting leaders.
She is a he.
She is he. From 33 Latin American and Caribbean countries for this week's China Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Summit. Xi wooed the visiting leaders with promises to expand visa-free travel and open a new $10 billion development credit line. Who wants to go to China? Xi also used the Latin American summit to take some swipes at the U.S. He secured Colombian President Petro's agreement to sign on to the Belt and Road Initiative, despite U.S. pressure not to, and he pledged support for Panama against U.S. pressure over Panama Canal control. We'll talk about this on a subsequent show. But China is moving to take over the Western Hemisphere while Trump is moving against them at the international level. And it's amazing what China is getting away with.
Not
and
for
we
long.
need to bring pressure to stop it.
Not for long. We got to go to break. But, I just laughed out loud, and I was just thinking about Judge Janine, how she laughs so loud. I love it. On her last show, it was great. Anyway, we got to go. Take a break. Thank you very little.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
What you got there, Dick Morris? I want to congratulate Judge Janine again also.
Hello?
Oh, this is Pamela?
Hi, Pamela.
Hi, Pamela.
This is Dick Morris. How are you?
Many of us space people are not happy with this $1,000 for a baby. It reeks of welfare. And you know what? I didn't have the pleasure of sitting on my ass and getting pregnant and having child after child. I worked, took care of my parents, and I worked hard.
Yeah, but this is a one-shot thing of $1,000 per baby. And it's designed to have people, number one, get married, and number two, not have abortion. Because if you don't have an abortion, and if you get married, 70% of children are now born out of wedlock if they're born to single parents. And it's about time that we offered a financial incentive to get married and not to have an abortion. And this is really about the pro-life movement and also the family values movement.
I wonder if you...
with this. It's not what we Republicans voted for.
Yeah, well, we voted for the outcome, and this is a method of getting there. But thanks for your call.
Thank you, Pamela. I wonder if they could take the money from pro-choice type of places. I mean, wonder if they could, that's $1,000 per baby. What are they giving to the pro-choice organizations? I don't know what that is, but...
Now, you were after me to choose songs from Santana. So I finally did come up with one. A YouGov Economist survey revealed that support for Trump among voters aged 30 to 44, millennials, jumped by 10 points between April and May.
Wow.
10 points. Of those surveyed, 48% said they had a favorable view of Trump this month, but 2 months ago only 38% did. That surge marked the biggest one-month increase for any demographic group surveyed in the poll, and it comes as millennials represent the largest block of the electorate. Support for Trump waned in previous surveys this spring because of the Trump tariffs, but now with the economy doing well and inflation clearly under control, they're back, and they're back in large numbers. Now, you recall that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, one of the creations of the UN,
right,
put out arrest warrants for Bibi Netanyahu and for the Minister of Defense in the country.
Right.
And they claimed that they were racists and they were perpetuating genocide. And the International Criminal Court said that they were guilty of a crime, and if they showed up anyplace else outside of Israel, they would be arrested.
Yeah, but now Trump got sanctions to hurt them. Well, you watch what he's going to do. The Hague, Netherlands, the International Criminal Court, ICC, chief prosecutor has lost access to his email and his bank accounts have been
so cool.
This is so great. I love it.
This is so cool. The son of a gun. One said Netanyahu should be arrested, said that he should go to jail, and now
he
Trump
can't talk to his
administration has
girlfriend
come
on
back.
email.
And he can't get his emails, and his bank accounts are frozen.
Too bad. The Hague-based court's American staffers have been told that if they travel to the U.S., they risk arrest. Some non-governmental organizations have stopped working with the ICC, and the leaders of one won't even reply to emails from court officials. Those are just some of the hurdles facing court staff since U.S. President Trump in February slapped sanctions on its chief prosecutor, Kareem Khan, according to the interviews with current and former ICC officials, international lawyers, and human rights advocates.
That is so cool.
That is so great. Now, this is pretty cool.
But this is so cool. You know, you read about how the ICC, the criminal court, which the U.S. does not participate in, we refuse to, said that Netanyahu should be arrested.
Oh, God.
And they actually issued a warrant.
Was
for
that
the
because
arrest.
of the Gaza thing? Was
Yeah.
that what they? Sure.
They issued a warrant a decade ago for the arrest of George H.W. Bush.
Oh, right.
And he was not able to go to Switzerland to accept an award because he risked being arrested by the ICC.
Imagine.
And now Trump has gone after the son of a gun prosecutor and said, okay, you can do all the warrants you want, but I'm freezing your bank account. You can't use emails, and you can't travel.
He is mint, as we used to say
That is
growing
so
up.
cool.
Trump is mint. This is a good story, too. Ukraine, what they're doing with this drones and whatnot,
Yeah,
this is
this
great.
is so incredible.
And
Ukraine is so good. They every time you think they're beaten, every time you say the war's going the Russians' way,
stand
Putin is
tall.
winning, they come up with something that absolutely turns it around, and they have now with drones.
In over 3 years of war, Russia has lost nearly, this is horrible, 1 million men. Wow. who have been killed or injured in attempts to conquer Ukraine. Even when Congress blocked aid and Trump shut off the flow of weapons, Ukraine adapted, relying on drones to hold the line. Ukraine is now building a drone wall. This is cool. Creating a deadly no man's land that dramatically raises the cost of every Russian assault. Despite U.S. weapons restrictions that have been forcing Ukraine to fight with one hand tied behind his back throughout the war, Ukraine has built a formidable arsenal of long-range drones and missiles. In recent months, Ukrainian drones have struck deeper into Russia, targeting the oil refineries, airfields, and infrastructure sustaining Russia's war effort. Ukraine demonstrated its growing strike capabilities in March by launching hundreds of drones at Moscow in what the city's mayor called the largest drone attack of the war. Russia's air defenses are struggling to adapt to this new threat. Retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, President Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, said Russia isn't winning. After 3 years, they've gained meters, not miles. Ukraine, having adapted after years of Russian strikes, recently dealt a major blow by knocking out 10% of Russia's oil refining capacity with drone attacks. The U.S. is already studying Ukraine's success with its domestically built long-range drones. That's cool, right? The war has spurred a dramatic transformation in Ukraine's defense industry, where once Ukraine relied heavily on foreign arms, it's now produced 40% of its own weaponry. Ukraine will always need it and its own strong weapons so that we can have our own strong Ukrainian state, Zelensky said. Ukraine will always need its own technological superiority so that Russia knows we will respond to every attack. Today, Ukraine produces several million drones. Wow. Supplying soldiers with about 200,000 drones per month. These drones now account for up to 80% of Russian casualties. On the battlefield, the impact is clear. One soldier told me, a Russian soldier told me, he hasn't seen heavy armor in a long time, and that every day we see 5 to 8 assaults using motorcycles. My kind of guy. Russian military analysis also warned that the Kremlin elite remains dangerously disconnected from the scale of the army's losses and the grim realities on the ground. One bluntly admitted, we cannot afford to continue fighting in this manner. We simply do not have enough population for that type of military tactics. Russia's economy, once resilient, is now faltering. Growth has plummeted from around 5% to near zero since late 2024. Trump's tariff war has rocked oil prices, which also exposes how vulnerable Russia is. Even former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. How do you say it?
Medvedev.
Yeah, whatever. Has publicly warned of Russia's possible disintegration. Another Russian commentator added, I feel sorry for us. We're being beaten. Nice.
This is incredible. Literally in the last 2 months, Ukraine has gone from losing to winning, and they've done it because of drones. Let me give you a little background on how drones came to be invented. The defense minister of Israel, I forget his name, was visiting New York City with his kids, and he went into FAO Schwartz, the toy store, and they had a helicopter there that the kid could operate remotely that would go up in the air and fly in the air, and the kid would control it with a remote. This was before drones were basically invented. And he said, why don't we adopt this technology and put a camera on it? So he bought the drone for like $80 in the store and brought it home to Israel. And the Israelis figured out how to make it into a flying bomb and to make it into a flying camera. And now the Ukrainians have picked up on it and used it to neutralize the Russian tanks and the Russian ground offensive. And it is so incredible to watch this country, just like Israel, come up with these inventions and these techniques to survive in the face of the overwhelming manpower force of the Red Army. is just amazing to watch this.
This is how you adapt when you're poor. I always wanted cars, and I didn't have money to buy a car. I had to buy a cheap car and then fix it, and I learned to fix it. Zelensky didn't have the money to fight. He's figuring out how to do it with these drones.
And so we're looking at
necessity is the mother of invention.
We're looking very likely in the next week or 2 weeks at two enormous diplomatic achievements by Donald Trump. One is the treaty between Zelensky and Putin ending the war.
Wow.
And the second is the treaty with Iran stopping their nuclear program. And both of these initiatives are made possible by the diplomacy and the developments over the last couple of weeks. The Russians would never agree to stop this war if they were winning. But now that they're losing because of drones and the creativity of Ukraine, they're suddenly ready to make a deal.
I wonder if anyone out there is counting all of these things that Trump has gotten done right now. And how long has it been? 5 months?
4 months.
4 months. And look what he's doing.
Right.
We got time for this? I think so.
Yeah.
Immigration and deportation. The Department of Homeland Security has requested 20,000 National Guard troops to help with the Trump administration's immigration enforcement. A DHS official confirmed to The Hill Thursday. DHS requested the Guard members from the Pentagon to help carry out the president's mandate from the American people to arrest and deport criminal illegal aliens. Department Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement. So there he goes again. Bye-bye. Okay, say bye-bye.
And the other amazing achievement of Donald Trump is that Iran is getting weaker.
Right.
Iran's position today is far weaker than the last time Tehran and Washington reached a nuclear deal. Iran's economy is crippled by Trump's sanctions. Inflation and unemployment are soaring. The energy sector, which is the whole country, remains in deep crisis, despite Iran's holding some of the world's largest oil and gas reserves, thanks to a lack of funds to invest, thanks to Trump's sanctions. Meanwhile, Iran's regional proxy network has been battered. Hamas, Hezbollah, and even the Houthis are all diminished, and the Assad regime in Syria is gone. Zooming out, the threat is even clearer. The risk of U.S. military strikes, U.S.-Israeli military strikes, is a distinct possibility, while Russia and China, Iran's close partners, remain reluctant to come to Iran's aid in the event of a war.
Wow.
So Trump has completely changed the playing field in the Middle East and with Iran, at the same time that Ukraine has changed it in their home country. And the trip you've heard about Trump going to Qatar and the Saudi Arabia and Dubai and pulling off these $2 trillion of deals is not lost on Iran, because those countries are the main source of funding of
What do you
Iran.
mean not lost on Iran? What do you mean by that?
They get their money from Qatar.
Right.
And from the UAE and from Saudi Arabia.
Got it.
And you can bet that the overt part of this deal is they're promising to invest in the U.S., but I'm sure there's a codicil in this deal saying you will stop investing money in Iran. And by squeezing Iran, he's getting what he wants. That's why he's in the Middle East this week. And next week he's meeting with Iran.
Wow.
It's all part of the move to put this all together. And what he's getting in the Middle East is going to cripple Iran and force them to make a deal.
Just like he crippled Iran before his first term.
Right.
And then Biden, letting them produce their oil and all that. Yeah,
when we come back, we'll talk about Trump's desire to raise NATO's military capacity.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Trump told NATO, we're not going to defend you if you don't defend yourself.
Yeah.
And he demanded that NATO countries ante up and now spend 2% of their GDP on defense. And all the NATO countries fell in line except for Canada and one or two others. But now he's upping the ante even further.
So NATO foreign ministers began meeting in Antalya, Turkey on Wednesday as they rushed to boot defense spending and satisfy President Trump's demand of 5% GDP outlay.
He was insisting on 2%. Now he's raising it to 5%.
You know what you need? You know the clicker when you go to church and the guy in the back wants to click how many people are in the click, 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 and you hear that, or you go to something. You need that with Trump. You need the clicker so you can count how many friggin' things he's doing here. So anyway, the 2-day gathering looks to forge a compromise deal that keeps Trump happy and committed to the group just over 6 weeks before leaders come to face with the president in The Hague. Trump has piled on pressure ahead of the summit by insisting he wants NATO to agree to devote 5% of GDP to defense, with promises already made, as Breitbart News reported. The AFP report set out what lies ahead for NATO. NATO boss Mark Rutte has floated a proposal for allies to commit to 3.5% of direct military spending by 2032, as well as another 1.5% of broader security-related expenditure. Countries most likely to struggle with that target include Canada, Spain, and Italy, who are still just limping towards 2% in the AFP report notes.
So if you're Vladimir Putin, you sit back there, you're getting clobbered in Ukraine. These drones are destroying your huge advantage in numbers. And now Trump is going to double the resources of NATO with increased spending by domestic NATO countries. And he's doing this while he's increasing tariffs and bringing pressure on them to buy American energy.
Clicker, baby. Where's the clicker?
Unbelievable.
It's really unbelievable. So this is you.
Yeah, Trump is also proposing to cut back criminal penalties for offenses against government regulations. Congressional lawmakers are seeking a bipartisan path to codify President Trump's order easing regulations that sometimes make people into criminals for breaking laws they have no reason to know exist. Trump's order reined in criminal prosecutions and enforcement of regulatory offenses, while prioritizing prosecutions for those who knowingly violate the rules and cause significant harm. It was praised by lawmakers and legal experts as the first step toward retracting government overreach. Indeed, former Harvard Law School professor Harvey Silvergate estimates that the average American commits 3 felonies a day without even realizing it.
Wow.
And I don't think he counts jaywalking or littering as felonies.
That's pretty funny.
Now, in all of the discussions of budget, everybody talks about the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. They are the congressional equivalent of the Office of Management and Budget. The fix is in with the Congressional Budget Office. It's supposed to be a nonpartisan, impartial referee, but in fact it's a wholly owned subsidiary of the Democratic Party. It was created in 1974 during Watergate, when Congress wanted to rein in Nixon and increase the power Congress had vis-a-vis the president. And they created the Congressional Budget Office as a nonpartisan advisory body. But an examination of the budget of CBO's performance and its personal political history reveals a remarkable amount of unreliability and left-wing bias. And this is the agency that's scoring the reconciliation package, the agency that won't let Congress take account of the massive new tariff revenue Trump is bringing in, instead making them cut the budget more than they want to and even consider imposing some other taxes. Democrats are using CBO analysis of the hotly debated budget reconciliation bill to fight President Trump's proposed historic tax cuts and efforts to reform programs throughout the federal government, including assuring that American taxpayers are not on the hook for the health care of illegal immigrants. To bolster these arguments, Democrats and their media allies have leaned on widespread acceptance that the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, is nonpartisan.
Yeah.
1,400 different media stories last year appended the word nonpartisan to the beginning of the office's name. But CBO's extensive history of overestimating benefits for Americans from public health care, underestimating the cost of Democratic policies on taxpayers, and stacking the deck against Republican policies reveals a highly partisan agency influencing lawmakers in order to further left-wing causes. In addition to its history of unreliable projections propping up Democrats, according to FEC records of the nearly 17,000 donated to candidates and committees by CBO employees since '86, only $250 went to Republicans.
Wait, hold on. 17,000.
And $250 went to Republicans. And $16,750 went to Democrats.
Isn't that amazing?
The CBO's history of overestimating benefits from public health care initiatives has been used by lawmakers to justify monumental policy decisions. For example, CBO estimated that 25 million people would gain coverage from the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, but less than half actually did so. And the result is that the Obamacare never had the beneficiaries they said it did.
Right.
A series of recent reports and congressional budget investigations have revealed the extent of CBO's unreliability and clear evidence of bias. A report in January from the Economic Policy Innovation Center, entitled How the Budget Baseline is Biased, reveals the underlying bias cooked into the CBO books, particularly with how CBO assumes legislative proposals will influence the baseline, the benchmark for measuring spending. In reality, the CBO is required by law to distort the baseline in favor of higher spending and taxes. 4 deviations from the current law and the baseline that CBO is required by the state to incorporate to inflate spending or revenue higher than they would actually be if Congress made no further changes in law. In a February hearing before the House Ways and Means Committee, the Foundation for Government Accountability's Helen Dubois testified to CBO's poor record of fiscal estimates. CBO predicted that Biden's poorly named Inflation Reduction Act would result in a net decrease in the deficit of $58 billion over 10 years. But CBO got it wrong. The new analysis showed that it would in fact increase the deficit by $300 billion over the next decade. So when the umpire is fixed and he rules safe when it's really out, and he rules a ball when it's really a strike,
you kick sand on his shoes.
It's very hard to win that at bat. The
Billy Martin used to kick sand on the umpire's shoe, remember?
Yep.
He was
and
great.
Get thrown out of the game.
He always got thrown. How many times? Like 10 times, I think.
Now, the Democrats have a problem, which is that their congressional majority, the House majority, are composed of very old, largely men, and they would probably get routinely reelected coming from safe districts. But now AOC and her group of left-wing Democrats are threatening to run primary fights against them, to challenge them. And that is causing unbelievable havoc in the Democratic Party.
You got your Dylan song in there.
They can't stay forever young, but they can stay in office forever.
Yeah, right.
The party liberals, the younger voices in Congress and outside, are increasingly disillusioned with how the Democrats' old guard is managing the high-stakes battle against Trump. On issues as varied as immigration, impeachment, and picking committee leaders in Capitol Hill, these voices are airing frustrations that the party is failing to meet the moment in the face of a White House threat they deem to be existential. Many are battling to divorce the party from the veteran leaders of the past, to include former President Biden, who's emerged recently with a series of public events, and instead to carve an avenue for younger up-and-comers to take the reins and remold the party's image with design to win back the working class. This is what I've been predicting
I don't
for a
see
long time.
that happening.
Well, this is what I've been predicting. As the Democrats lose, they become more liberal.
Right.
They throw out the moderates. They throw out the older members. And they bring in young radicals who are committed to really crazy left-wing policies that make it even harder for them to win.
Hold on. Not to interrupt. I'm sorry I am interrupting, but it's good to bring in the young people, but not the radicals.
Yeah.
When the party starts to, fail a little bit, get rid of some of the old dudes and get some young people in.
Get sane people
Right.
instead.
All right, so go on.
There's a group called Justice Democrats, a liberal group advocating for a new crop of younger progressives. There are too many corporate establishment politicians who feel like they are nothing. They're do-nothing Democrats in the face of the existential Trump. It's time to usher in a new generation, they said. The fight over Trump's deportation policy is a major source of strife. Trump has long used immigration as a wedge issue to animate conservatives and other voters who find appeal in his tough enforcement approach. But some moderate Democrats have warned colleagues to stay clear of this topic for fear of a voter backlash. Liberals are furious with that advice, saying the real backlash will occur if Democrats don't fight tooth and nail against deportations, many of them taking place without judicial screening. The co-founder of the Indivisible Project, a grassroots crazy progressive group, said this is crazy that any Democrat would say that this is a losing position for us. They're thinking about it like in terms of the 1990s, and we live in a completely different environment now. In recent days, the clash has turned to more structural matters, as liberals are questioning whether the party rules make it all but impossible for young stars to move up. Those questions were thrust into the spotlight after AOC last week declined to run at the top Democratic seat on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, a prominent perch for Democrats fighting to shed a public light on Trump's many controversies. The reason the party's seniority system, she said, the odds are stacked against her. AOC told People, it's actually clear to me that the underlying dynamics in the Democratic caucus have not shifted with respect to seniority as much as I would like and would be necessary. Some Democrats have questioned that argument, noting that AOC would have had to leave the powerful Energy and Commerce panel to seek the oversight seat. It wasn't a done deal or anything. Seniority is a strong factor, but it's more like rolling of the dice. Still, AOC is not the only liberal superstar with a huge national following. She's also a favorite of the left to run for the White House in 28.
Good.
After announcing her oversight decision, progressives wasted no time in taking shots at the seniority system they say is denying younger challenge any chance of upward mobility. She's right, there are still barriers to keeping young people from running for these sorts of positions. I mean, that's part of my calculation in not running as well. So we're watching here the growth of the left wing of the Democratic Party and how they are threatening primary fights against most of the moderate and older Democrats.
Yeah. We got a cut, and we'll be back in a minute.
The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug Depierro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. I'm pretty much the only guy that said from the beginning that Trump would run again, would win the Republican nomination, would win the election, would win the popular vote, would win the electoral vote, and would win the swing states. Now I'm pretty much the only person who's saying the Democratic Party is moving to the left, and AOC will be their candidate in 28.
Wow.
And the best indication we have of the growth of the power of the left in the Democratic Party is in the New York City mayoral race.
Yeah, this Mamdani.
Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani. M-A-M-D-A-N-I.
Mamdani. It's very hard to say.
Mamdani.
Opposes the pro-Israel and anti-Holocaust resolution. As the 2025 New York City mayoral race heats up, State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, a declared socialist and candidate aligned with the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, is drawing criticism for refusing to support two symbolic but deeply meaningful legislative resolutions. According to a report on Friday in the New York Post, Mamdani notably skipped out on a recent resolution commemorating the 77th anniversary of the founding of Israel and had previously declined to sign onto another resolution denouncing the Holocaust. The first instance occurred last year when Mamdani refused to support a resolution that reaffirmed the Assembly's commitment to Holocaust remembrance, while other lawmakers from across the ideological spectrum joined the symbolic gesture. Mamdani's silence was deafening. This week, he again opted out, this time declining to sponsor a resolution celebrating Israel's 77th Independence Day. According to the report in New York Post, this rebuff of a long-standing ally of the United States and the spiritual and ancestral homeland of millions of Jews has stirred frustration among Jewish community leaders and political opponents alike. I can't believe that he could do this, and the Jewish people are going to vote for this.
To get elected.
Yeah. The DSA assemblyman's posture is not entirely unexpected, given his record. Mamdani has long criticized Israel and its policies describing the Jewish state as an apartheid regime. But the refusing even to sign a resolution condemning the Holocaust, a genocide that claimed the lives of 6 million Jews, Mamdani risked alienating a vital constituency in the city shaped by Jewish history and activism. The Jews leaders have expressed their dismay at this guy. He's unbelievable. This goes beyond foreign policy. It's a question of moral clarity. If Mamdani can't bring himself to acknowledge Israel's right to exist or the horrors of the Holocaust, how can he represent the city that owns so much to its Jewish residents? Even among progressive circles, Mamdani's abstentions have drawn unease. Political observers notice that while one thing to debate Israel policy, there's one thing to do that, especially in the context of ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, it's quite another to reject symbolic gestures acknowledging historic truths.
And at the national level, the Democratic Party National Committee elected a guy named David Hogg, H-O-G-G, who is a strong activist in favor of gun control. And Hogg has been one of the leaders of the efforts to run primary fights against the long-term Democratic congressman and oust them from office. He was elected vice chair of the Democratic National Committee in February, and he sparked controversy last month when he indicated that his group, Leaders We Deserve, would launch a $20 million effort to back primary challenges to incumbent House Democrats in safe seats.
Explain.
Well, every House seat is open this year. It's up for election.
Sure.
And normally the long-term Democratic incumbents walk into the election. It's an easy win for them.
Right.
There's no effective Republican candidate in those districts. So Hogg is saying, I'm going to raise $20 million to run Democrats like AOC against these guys and take their seats in primary fights. And that pressure from the left is moving the party even further to the left.
Wow.
Because they have to fight against that. And now there's an effort to oust Hogg. They just elected him vice chairman of the Democratic Committee, and now there's an effort to throw him out. But the progress that the progressives and the crazies have made in taking over the asylum is incredible. And we're watching a situation where they're going to railroad AOC and get her declared as a Democratic candidate. And she'll get killed in the election. But God bless her.
God bless her. The hog tie. All right. Thank you. It's been an honor here, Dick Morris.
It's great.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
No. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Dick Morris Show. You can hear The Dick Morris Show Sundays at noon. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.